Hello, Rejoice family, and those beyond our Rejoice family, as we come together at this beginning of our second week in this time of physical distancing, in this time of walking through this uh, coronavirus, COVID-19 uh, crisis time, pandemic, whatever words you want to use there. And again, in this time where I know, at least for me, I've seen a lot of things that continue to focus in on all the things going on around us. Sometimes I think it's good to take these breaks and these times to just have a little bit of positivity in the midst of this time. So I'm going to begin like I normally do with a bit of scripture. Our scripture today comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 12. This is Paul writing about the gifts. So this starts at verse 4. Now there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of services, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it's the same God who activates all of them in everyone. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. To one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, and to another the utterance of knowledge according to the same Spirit. To another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by the one Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another the discernment of spirits, to another various kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. All these are activated by one and the same Spirit, who allots to each one individually, just as the Spirit chooses. For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in the one Spirit we are all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit. So I was thinking about what I would do today. I started thinking and reflecting on the role I've tried to play as a leader in this community. And although I'm not normally a person who goes for these kind of little catchphrase type things, for whatever reason I ended up with 5 C's. So to me, this is what a leader does. And again, this is not all of it, but at least this is the first 5 things that came to me. So leaders are calm, centered, connected. They bring creativity, but they also bring curiosity. An apology for the alliteration with 5 C's, but I do try to remain calm in the midst of whatever happens to be going on around me, because I do know that's one of the things people look for, is they want to know that things are going to be okay. And I've walked through some difficult times in my time as an adult, both in the Army, in ministry. I've been through a lot of different things, and again, part of that is learning how to remain calm in yourself and to learn how to deal with your own anxieties. I try to remain centered in the things that are important to me, my faith, my love of Scripture, my love of reading in general, the people that I love. I try to remain connected with the people that I serve, however that's possible. And you have limits to that. You've got to be able to take care of yourself in the midst of it too. But I do think being connected is an important part of that. But I'm going to focus today on this last two, these kind of cousins, creativity and curiosity, because I think it can be a fun place to look, and it's a place I've spent a lot of time thinking about. It's a place that I have a lot of passion about. And I'm thankful for some of the places that's led me in my life. Again, being curious, being a person who is open to being creative. I can talk a lot about this for a long time, but just some quick reflections for today and some things maybe that can bring a little joy. So some of us may be at the point where we're bored. Or maybe you've been bored for an entire week. Or maybe you've been bored for longer than that. So the good news is this is a place where curiosity and creativity can play. When we're constantly busy, it's hard for us to be curious. It's hard for us to be creative because we're continually distracted by other things. It takes time. It takes that space to be able to invest in being curious about something and taking something that you're curious about and then turning it into something creative. So again, also crises can be a place where creativity comes to life. That you all know the phrase about necessity being the mother of invention. Well, there's some truth to that, to where being in a place where you have to come up with a solution sometimes leads to some really creative ways of finding ways to do things in a new way. But on the flip side, creativity is scary. It's vulnerable. It's full of terrifying firsts. You know, I listened to Brene Brown talking on a podcast just this weekend, talking about, she called them FFTs. I'm going to use the G-rated version of TFTs, terrifying first tries. It was terrifying when I started writing. It was terrifying when I started doing video recordings, especially because I don't know how many times, if I've ever shared this with other people, but I'm sensitive about the way I look in both photographs, but also in video. And so, you know, who wants to look at me, or who wants to pay attention to this? And it can be scary. And so one of the things I've been doing with staff over the last several weeks, and this is just coincidence, we've been going through a book by Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic on Creativity. And one of the first things she talks about is all the reasons not to be creative. So I'm going to share just a little bit of it. It's kind of fun. So this is her listing some of the many ways in which you might be afraid to live a more creative life. You're afraid you have no talent. You're afraid you'll be rejected or criticized or ridiculed or misunderstood or, worst of all, ignored. You're afraid there's no market for your creativity and there's no point in pursuing it. You're afraid that somebody else already did it better. You're afraid that somebody else already did it better, that everybody else already did it better. You're afraid somebody will steal your ideas, so it's safer to keep them hidden forever in the dark. You're afraid you won't be taken seriously. You're afraid your work isn't politically, emotionally, or artistically important enough to change anyone's life. You're afraid your dreams are embarrassing. You're afraid that someday you'll look back on your creative endeavors as having been a giant waste of time, effort, and money. You're afraid you don't have the right kind of discipline. You're afraid you don't have the right kind of workspace or financial freedom or empty hours in which to focus on invention or exploration. You're afraid you don't have the right kind of training or degree. You're afraid you're too fat. As she writes, I have no idea what this has to do with creativity exactly, but experience has taught me both of us are afraid that we're too fat, so let's put it on the anxiety list for good measure. You're afraid of being exposed as a hack, or a fool, or a dilettante, or a narcissist. You're afraid of upsetting your family with what you may reveal. You're afraid of what your peers and coworkers will say if you express your personal truth aloud. You're afraid of unleashing your innermost demons, and you really don't want to encounter your innermost demons. You're afraid your best work is behind you. You're afraid you never had any best work to begin with. You're afraid you neglected your creativity for so long that you can never get it back. You're afraid you're too old to start. You're afraid you're too young to start. You're afraid because something went well in your life once, so obviously nothing can ever go well again. You're afraid because nothing has ever gone well in your life, so why bother trying? You're afraid of being a one-hit wonder. You're afraid of being a no-hit wonder. So again, she stops at that point and says we go on and on, but basically it's scary, scary, scary. So creativity looks different in different people. For me, my medium tends to be words. Adam is a phenomenal photographer. He has a great eye for that. Maybe you organize, maybe you paint, maybe you skate, maybe you dance. Who knows what your gift God has spirit has placed within you. Again, Elizabeth Gilbert in her book tells a story of a non-related, a poet named Jack Gilbert talking to a student who she later got a chance to talk with, and the way he reported to this student encouraged the student. Basically he said, do you have the courage? Do you have the courage to bring forth this work? The treasures that are hidden within you are hoping that you will say yes. So again, this is her talking about, Elizabeth Gilbert, I believe that one of the oldest and most generous tricks the universe plays on us human beings, both for its own amusement and ours. The universe buries strange jewels deep within all of us, and then stands back to see if we can find them. Whether it's the universe, whether it's God, whether it's the Spirit, I do believe we all have these great gifts within us, and that they're there to be uncovered. And they're going to come out in different ways. And I do think that we all have different gifts. That's part of what it means to be, people of the body of Christ. That, I don't have all the gifts, you don't have all the gifts, that we all do different things. And it comes out whether, it's in raising our families, whether it's in the work that we do, whether it's in the hobbies that we have, or whether it's those things that we haven't unearthed yet. So I'm going to close today, again, with another work of mine. This is one of my, again, maybe you're not supposed to have favorites among the things that you've written, but this is, I hate to say it, this is one of my favorites. So this is actually called Creative Words. So, so it begins. A clever turn of phrase or a verbal picture. In the beginning come the words, and in their own genesis they craft a new world, painting with the spirit of imagination, breathing new life where once only an abyss rested. The words emerge and join together as bones and sinews, muscles and skin. Life emerges from the boneyard of the void. Once they emerge, they take their own form and have their own life, each one its own character to be savored and relished, evoking sights and smells, sounds, feelings, and emotions, recreating the past, reimagining the future. Each one has the potential to unearth memories long forgotten. Some use their indelible ink to tattoo themselves on the soul. The realities they create may be harsh and brutal. In their dystopic world, we see the dark side of reality, the truths we would rather not see, the sins we would prefer remain buried, words that rend the world and pierce the soul. Sometimes the poet and the prophet are one, crying tears of sorrow over words that cannot be contained, and a people whose ears no longer hear and eyes no longer see. Yet words uttered from the same mouth may ache of passion and love, calling us to hope, lightening our darkness, pointing to potentiality and power unimagined, and a future seen only through the hopes and dreams of faith. But they are never just words. They are the echoes of the deep language that pours its magic into the world. They point to the real and imagined. They define and name. They build up and tear down. Words set loose on the world, bearing the best and worst of humanity's heart, laying naked the mind and soul, a mirror showing the sacred and profane blended together. For the world the words create reflect the heart of their creator. They go forth to create. They rattle around in the eardrums and in the imaginations of those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. For in the beginning, the words come. The Genesis, the beginning of all the potential worlds that they might create. And in the end, when their pneumatic inspiration ceases, remains the apocalypse of new creation unveiled within our memory. So may you continue to be creative. May you continue to be sane, connected, grounded in the things that make you happy. Continue to stay strong out there. So I'm going to sign off now, and I wish you all blessings.